I was asked to do a training on adding texture to your projects. So I have created some samples, and then I have one technique that I would like to walk you through that I learned that's new and never have done before. So I will get my camera flipped around and we will get to it. Used to get some texture is this 3D embossing folder. This is called Dotted Circle 3D embossing folder, and that number is 163789 if you're interested in that. So this is just the embossing folder with nothing done to it, just run through. And I love how it, this was a very simple, basic card pattern that's in the current catalog that I thought was really cute. But it's very simple and basic. Like, it has, you know, the one layer. It has the little tag right here. But this embossing folder just kicks it up and makes it really beautiful, I think. And then I made this card. I don't know if you can see, but that's the debossed side, so it's concave. I just inked the convex side of the die, or the embossing folder, before I put it in, and I used pumpkin ink on that. So, and again, a really simple card that really has a pop with the embossing folder. And then this one, I inked the opposite side. So I inked the flatter part. So when I ran it through, it inked everything except what is popped up. So that's kind of cool. And there's some imperfections, and honestly, imperfections don't bother me that much. I think they add to the fun and the homemade feel of it. The second thing that I used to add texture was embossing powder. So this was heat embossing. And Stampin' Up's embossing powders have been out of stock, so I haven't been able to order them, but I used colors that they offer. This one is clear embossing powder, and I'm not sure if I'm catching any of the sheen on that, but I just random stamped in Versamark ink and then embossed it with clear powder, and then I took my Pebbled Path ink and I put it down on my Teflon mat, and then I picked that up with a blending brush and blended it onto the background, and where the clear embossing is, it resists the ink, so it kind of adds a fun pop. And then the other thing I did with an embossing folder is I just did random stamping with the Versamark and silver embossing powder this time, and it just really packs a pretty punch. I thought this would be fun wedding card. So I don't have any weddings that I know of coming up, but I'm sure I will, and I'll use this. And then the third thing that I used for texture is texture paste. I don't have a huge amount of stamps and dies from Stampin' Up yet, so I did use a stencil that I had on hand, but I think it would be fun to use your dies to create a stencil. But this one I just stenciled through. I used the Shimmery white embossing paste. The first thing I did is I took my pumpkin ink and I put it down on my mat. I took the Shimmery white embossing paste and put a dollop on top, mixed it all up, and colored it to be orange is what I did. But I don't know if you can see how sparkly that is, but that shimmery white embossing paste is absolutely beautiful. And then this one, so after I did this card, I had my gooped up stencil, right, from putting it all the way through. So I just flipped my stencil over and stamped it. So I kind of got the reverse effect on this one, which is kind of fun, and it, you know, less waste that way, right? And then this one is the technique that I want to show you today that I learned that was new. So on this one, I just put the embossing paste over a pretty pink piece of cardstock, and then I dried it to where it was almost completely dry, and then stamped into it to create kind of a debossed image. And then I took a water brush. Sorry, I lost my words. And picked up some ink out of the lid of my stamp pad and colored that in. So that is what I'm going to show you today. 2x4 piece of pretty in pink cardstock. I have the shimmery white embossing paste. I have a palette knife, and I have my Melon Mambo stamp, ink, and my water brush. So I'm going to show you how I did this. So this is really sticky and messy. If you've not worked with embossing paste or anything like this before, you do want to clean your tools right away because it can ruin them. I love working on my Teflon mat because stuff really does not stick to it. But I'm going to give you a close-up of that. It's really not picking up. There's some shimmer, but it is very, very shimmery. Very shimmery. Okay, so I just have some on my palette knife. And I'm just going to swipe it on my cardstock. And I kind of have my palette knife at a little bit of an angle. It's not totally flat on my paper. That helps me get a little smoother. Sometimes I like the texture. The first time that I did this, I goofed up and didn't dry my texture paste enough. So it didn't turn out as pretty. So now to kind of get a border, I'm just going to like put my palette knife perpendicular to my paper and just kind of scrape some of those edges off back into my jar to create a border here. And again, I'm not too worried about it being perfect. I used to be a perfectionist. I'm not so much anymore. I have a lot of kids and a big family, and it's really hard to be perfect when so I just kind of let things go how they go. I am going to put some more. It's thicker on this side and thinner on this side, so I'm going to spread that out. Okay. Now I'm going to bring in my heat gun. So this will be a little noisy. I apologize. And just heat this up. And this just speeds up the drying. I mean, you could air dry if you wanted, but this just speeds things up, which I like to do things quickly because my time is limited. So I am going to go ahead and finish drying this off camera so you don't have to listen to my heat gun for a few minutes. I'm pretty sure it took at least a few minutes to dry that. Just till it was barely tacky. You don't want to completely dry it because you still want to be able to push a stamp into it. So I will go ahead and finish this off camera. So, okay, so it is barely tacky, but it's still soft. So I'm using the You Are Beautiful cling stamp set, and that number is 163704. And I'm going to use this biggest one here. I did read that the photopolymer stamps are not great for this because they don't clean up as well. So I purposely bought cling stamps for this technique. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to press that down, and I do pretty firm pressure right into the texture paste. And you get that. Isn't that cool? I think it would be fun. You could even just leave it plain. I think it would be fun to add a background to a scrapbook page with that. But I'm going to pause this video here and go clean my stamp real quick, and then I'll be right back. Washed my stamp, and then I also took my heat gun and dried that some more before but it's really pretty. I think it's pretty as is, honestly. I think it would be really pretty subtle background on a scrapbook page. It would be really pretty. But I'm going to squeeze some ink into the lid of my pad here. All right, so my water brush, I'm going to squeeze out some water, get it wet, but I am going to dab that off because I don't want it too wet. And I'm just going to dip it into this ink here and just paint inside that image. It's not hard. Another tip for when you're doing this is you don't want too detailed of a stamp. You don't want something with a lot of fine lines because I don't think it's going to work as well. So something that's kind of more solid, like this one. I thought this stamp, when I saw this stamp, I'm like, I think this is the perfect stamp for it because it's just plain and simple and lots of big open spaces. So it's very light, and then I'll go back in, I'll dry my brush off some more so that I can get some more intense color. So my embossing powder got a little bit thin over here, but that's okay, I think. I think it's still really pretty. But just when you're doing stuff in the future, kind of get your embossing paste a good consistency all the way across. Like, I think this right on this side is like the perfect thickness, so that it really makes that image pop. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and dry this off a little bit and get some of this darker color here in the middle, and I'm just going to kind of go around the edges a little bit. Okie dokie. And there you have it. And then so for my card, I just matted that on a black piece of cardstock, put it on a white card base, and stamped a sentiment at the bottom. Wrapped a little twine around, and it's another really simple, beautiful card. I hope that you learned something new and are inspired maybe to try something new. Let me know if you have any questions or if you thought it was fabulous.